Hello and welcome to the Encounter Mercy podcast. I'm Vince Dragone and I have with me, as usual, Father Andy Boyd and Jesse Spandigal. How's it going?
Wrong. This is wrong.
He shouldn't be over there.
What's going on? You know, he puts the two fat guys on this side of the table so he can be behind his monitor over there.
You look so professional and techie.
Oh, yes, professional. Maybe we got to start this over. Let's. Sorry, I made that very unprofessional. We should start over. Welcome back to the Encounter Mercy podcast.
I was going to say, maybe we should get some radio voices.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
we don't have a good radio voice.
No.
We need to have that. Welcome to the Encounter Mercy podcast.
That really like traditional, like really.
Barnabas had a voice.
Yeah, and Barnabas does have a good. Brother Barnabas has a very good
Yeah,
voice.
he would do a good job.
So, well, you know, there's that website, not sponsored, Fiverr, that we could pay to get someone to do our voiceovers. Ooh, that's fun. You got to plug yourself back in. All right, so like we're figuring it out. So like people understand that this is like live with it too. I think it's fun to make fun of ourselves too. So
They have to.
you know all that technology stuff.
Well, speaking of Vince, also, if you zoom in on your face here, Vince, you're missing something.
I don't know what you're talking about.
You're like Samson. You have no beard.
Delilah took away all his
All
power.
of his strength is gone.
So,
What happened?
I don't know. So I told you guys a year ago, I'm going to grow a beard for a year.
Yeah.
Not going to shave,
Yeah.
not going to
Very
trim.
nice.
And I made it a year. And then what happened was I was sitting in my living room and it was driving me insane. And so I just said to my wife, hey, I'm going to go upstairs and trim it off. And she gave me a big smile and said, okay, yeah, go ahead.
I can hear her
for
saying it.
support.
Well, I can hear her saying it. She was grateful that thing was gone. It's starting to look like a bird was living out of it.
Did you use like the beard balm and stuff like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I had all the fancy stuff.
Did you see the one? What's the Catholic one that smells like
The Chrism one?
Chrism? Yeah.
Oh, that'd
I
be a
have
good one.
that.
Do you?
I do.
You like it?
Oh, I love it. But I love everything smelling like Chrism. You know, I take the old Chrism oil every year, and if I don't burn it with the first fire at the Easter Vigil, because it's really good, you get the cotton balls soaking in it, and it really creates a nice fire, especially if you don't have a big bonfire. So I do that. I'll usually take it and put it on cotton balls and stick it in my car. And then it creates like a car. Now, don't tell too many people that. Like, we probably shouldn't be asking your priest for the extra chrism oil. But
Yeah, you
No.
just said it to the whole world. So.
that's all right. There's not too many people listening. It'd be hilarious if Pope Francis writes, "You bad priest."
That'd be nice. Anyhow, so today segment, we're talking about fasting.
Fasting.
Our favorite topic.
Oh, you can see how much I love it.
Well, I think honestly, we don't talk about this topic. Like, we talk about prayer.
Yeah.
And we talk about giving to the poor, but from a Catholic perspective, we don't talk about fasting. I mean, this is a precept of the church
Yeah.
that we need to. So, like, why do we do it?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, like, I get that question from youth all the time. I think it's something that we need to kind of talk about and bring back a little bit, the importance of it, the importance of being vulnerable and dying to yourself and really being empty so that you can fill yourself up with Christ. I mean, all these reasons why are important, but why is it that we don't talk about it?
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, because throughout all of our history of the church, fasting has been important. You know, if we go back far enough and we look at, for instance, like the Desert Fathers, right? Early church, we're talking the 200, 300 ADs. We're talking about these men that went out to, and it wasn't just men too. I mean, there were women out there too, the Desert Mothers, but mostly these priests or these men that went out into the desert and lived lives of hermits, right? And so they fasted from food. They just kind of simply had to. There wasn't as much food for them. And on top of fasting for food, they would fast from water and from people as well. It was really living that ascetical life, right? There was that minimalistic life, kind of allows you to really enter deeper into your prayer when you don't have to worry about all of those things. Absolutely, you got to worry about food. And if you have a family like Vince, I don't expect you to go out into the desert and leave your kids and wife to fend for themselves. I don't think that's going to work over so well.
Well, yeah, not for me. My wife wants to get out of the house and do that. So
I can see that.
Yeah, but yeah, I gotta be around.
Yeah, you got to be around. So that's not. And you made a commitment, right? You made that vow to live with your wife for life and to take care of your children, to create a household. Same thing with you, Jesse. You have that vow to be committed to your wife, to care for your children, to provide for them. So it's not like you can just get up and leave from it, but that doesn't mean that we ignore fasting. It doesn't mean that we ignore these important aspects of our faith, because even though I fail at it regularly, it's an important practice, that denying ourselves something good, right? Like I always say to people, especially when it comes to chocolate, oh, I could eat chocolate all the time. I love chocolate. Who doesn't love chocolate? Well, actually, I do know some people who don't like chocolate, and they're just heathens. I'm going to use heathens. Father Larry might use pagans. I'm going to use heathens. I like that better. Okay? Anyway, chocolate. I could eat it all day, every day. Well, is there anything wrong with chocolate? No. There's nothing inherently wrong or bad about chocolate. But is it really something that I need to be consuming all the time? Is it something that I need to be taking in all the time? Depriving myself of something good, a good, can bring about another good, right? Number one, well, with me and sugar, it just makes me a little bit bloated, On top of that, though, a good that might come forth from it is, a disconnect from the sugary things that give you that quick burst energy, and then you feel like trash later. Now, that's a good. Losing weight, that's a good. But the question is, why are we doing it, right? So, there's all these fad diets. We could all go on a diet. But the key is, what's the purpose of fasting? Is it to lose weight? That might be an outcome of it, but we would pray and hope that it would be a spiritual benefit.
Well, that shouldn't be the main reason. Then oftentimes I think that's what we do. We're like, oh, it's Lent, so I'm going to go, I have to fast, so I'm going to go on this diet, and it's going to benefit me. Well, we've taken the focus off Christ. And I think for us, especially during Lent, fasting is really about focusing in on Christ. It's hard. I remember one year I tried fasting from condiments. I was like, I'm a slave to like ketchup and honey mustard and barbecue sauces and these things, and I'm like, I depend on them for happiness, and that's not good. That's not a good mentality. So like I was like, I'm really going to try it, but it's tough. And I think that's why fasting's important, because it gives us this level of discipline. If we're going to become a disciple, we need discipline. And so we can't become slave to these things. So I think you mentioned it, like, these are good things. These are not bad things. Chocolate, all this stuff. And but it's getting in the way of the great.
Yeah.
So sometimes the enemy of the great is too many good things. And so how do we focus in on Christ if these things are pulling us away? And it's like Jesus people, but they weren't focused necessarily on like the fish that they were eating. All that kind of stuff. It's more important, like they were with each other.
Yes.
And so I think that kind of mentality is good for fasting. Where's like, so like, what's the official teaching, like fasting? When are we supposed to do it? What does it look like? Because I think there's a lot of people who have no idea.
Absolutely.
There's like, I just need to stop eating.
Yeah. So in the church, we ask during Lent specifically. We can talk about other times of the year in a minute, but specifically in Lent, because that's where we are right now. When it comes to fasting, the church really only asks you to fast twice during the entire season of Lent. And that would be on Ash Wednesday and on Good Friday. And what the church asks of us for those two specific days is that we eat 3 meals, 2 of which are small meals, more of like eating 2 light lunches, very light lunches, and 1 larger meal, 1 meal of normal size. But the church doesn't just ask us to do that, and that's it. She also asks us to give up meat on those days, as well as all Fridays of Lent. Now, not all Fridays are fasting days, but they are days of abstinence from meat.
Okay.
So.
Like no meat.
Yeah.
Meat, because it's a luxury.
Sure.
I read one time that the reason we're allowed to have fish, of course, fish was like the poor man's food.
Yeah.
But also is because like fish have clear blood, so they couldn't see the blood.
Sure.
Have you heard that before?
I have heard that.
Okay.
I mean, whether or not there's all these different wives' tales to it,
Yeah.
but that's not a bad point.
Yeah, so, well, I just want to chime in real quick.
No,
and
go
I
for
raised
it.
my hand because
Yes.
you think that we had audio issues, because we did last time. This is not the second time we're recording this. But one thing that Catholic Answers mentioned before was because someone asked, okay, well, I heard that the only reason you can have fish is because it was going to benefit the fish industry
Yeah,
and the
my
Pope
mom-
lobbying. Okay, yeah, no, that wasn't the case. But
No.
one thing to keep in mind is the word meat in, I don't know if it was Aramaic or Greek or whatever it is, applied to just about everything. So
Yeah.
like vegetables were a type of meat. It was
Yeah.
a different type of meat. Fish was a different type of meat than your land animals type of meat. And so the translation of that and the meaning of that, that's why fish is considered, it's technically a meat in today's, like on
Right.
the food pyramid that was sold to us as a lie as kids growing up. But at the time, like, everything was meat, and so fasting was a little bit different in a way.
Well, and in fact, we are of the Western Church. We specifically, the three of us, are in the Roman Church, and so our fasting and abstinence is a lot different from our brothers and sisters in the Eastern Church. In the Eastern Church, they give up dairy, they give up a lot more things than we have to give up. And so their experience of Lent is much, much stronger and intense than ours.
Why? Because I know a lot of our brothers and sisters in the Eastern Church, they don't eat meat on any Friday.
Correct.
So why have we kind of given up on this? I mean, I hate to say it. I know there's some Roman Catholics who
Absolutely.
still don't. But why have we kind of given up on that?
Well, during Vatican II, one of the things that the fathers of Vatican II said was that we didn't have to completely give up meat on every Friday throughout the year. We still have to during Lent, but that doesn't mean we don't have some sort of responsibility for some sort of penance or fasting or abstinence. Okay. And so the church asks us to do some other, if you're not going to give up meat on Fridays, then you should do some sort of other act of spiritual devotion or something that is going to call your mind back to the fact that it's Friday. Right? Friday is the day that we claim that Christ died upon the cross. We still call it Good Friday. And there's good reasons for that, throughout the history of the church. So, yes, we don't have the requirement of the church saying no meat on any Friday, but it's still there. It's still there. It's just a requirement to do it other ways.
So can I go to Red Lobster and have Lobster Fest?
Sure. Well, and that's the thing. Like, you could,
Well, hold on a second.
but you can, because here's the thing: the church is only asking you to fast on 2 days.
Right.
They're asking you to abstain from meat, and even if you don't abstain from meat throughout the year, or you abstain from meat every Friday, it's an abstention. It doesn't ask you to fast.
Are you telling me I can pig out
One meal.
one meal? I can pig out all I
Not
want.
pig out.
So that's kind of what he said.
But-
going to Lobster Fest. What else are you going to do there? You're going to pig
you're
out. There's
conflating-
only one reason to go to
Well,
Red Lobster
absolutely,
to
but
do
you're
that.
conflating two things.
Okay.
All right, because see, that's the problem, and you're absolutely right. I'm glad you brought this up. I'm glad that we're talking about this because it is. We as Catholics say abstention from meat and fasting are the same thing. But I'm going to go back to what I said originally: was the church only asks us to fast twice. Fast, not abstain. Fast. So abstaining is not eating meat. Fasting is eating 2 smaller meals and 1 normal sized meal. Normal sized meal. That is a confusion because people say that abstaining from meat and fasting are the same thing, and it's not. It's 2 completely separate things. Now, we are specifically talking about fasting, but abstention comes into it because of the fact of people misunderstanding it.
Well, Jesus puts such emphasis on. He's like, some demons can only be cast out with prayer and fasting.
Yeah.
I mean, how important it is for Jesus to mention that. So I think, looking back when I was a kid, we used to do these 24-hour fasts. Like, we would pray together as a group of guys. I had some very dear friends that we do a bonfire. We would, pray. We'd mess around and do guy things and blow up things with firecrackers. But there was an element there of we didn't eat. We sacrificed. And then at the end of the night, we'd go around and ask each other, what do you need prayers for? And I look back at that, those times of, we were empty with food, but really we were united with each other. There was a deepness there. I think there's something that's we've robbed this generation of the beauty of fasting, like what it really means to deny yourself, to really, I think back to those moments. Like I felt much closer when I did that fast, when I sacrificed, when I was like, okay, I'm gonna really focus in. This is tough. This is it's a very tough thing to ask for people to fast. But when Jesus says you need to fast and pray to remove these, you need this. I think those words carry weight.
Yes.
I don't know, thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
Well, go ahead, Jesse. Vince, I'm looking over here. Were you gonna say something? Okay. Well, because I want to jump right into this scripture passage.
All right.
All right, because I think that it kind of gives light to everything that we're experiencing and talking about. We hear in the first book of Peter, his first letter, in chapter 4, therefore, since Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourselves also with the same attitude. For whoever suffers in the flesh has broken with sin, so as not to spend what remains of one's life in the flesh on human desires, but on the will of God. So looking at that just a little bit at a time, since Christ suffered in the flesh, arm yourself also with the same attitude. We're going to suffer, right? Abstaining from meat can be a suffering. Fasting can definitely be a suffering. Like we said, I can abstain from chocolate, but fasting to the point where I'm eating such a small meal, that can be difficult. It can hurt, right? Mm-hmm. Sometimes you go to bed hungry, and that's not fun. That kind of hurts. But we're going to suffer. But do it with the same attitude as Christ did, with love, right? Mm-hmm. For whoever suffers in the flesh has broken with sin. They have cut themselves off from sin. When we suffer, we can disconnect ourselves from sin and remove ourselves from sin. And there is a true connection, especially with fasting, right? It takes a part of our human body. It's so easy to, especially in our country, in our world, and where we live, it's so easy. I can go out to McDonald's right now if I wanted to and get as many Big Macs as I could afford and eat and take care of that hunger. But separating myself from that and going through that pain, it can help me to disconnect myself from that sin, so as not to spend what remains of one's life in the flesh on human desires, which I think we all do. We spend a lot of our focus on, first thing in the morning, if I don't get my cup of coffee, I have a horrible headache and I'm miserable, right? That's a human desire. Is it necessary? Sure. In my life right now it is. But is that something that I really should be focusing on? Probably not, right? But rather focus on the will of God. So our desire should be on the will of God, and abstaining ourselves and fasting from those things of the world can really help our prayer life and our spiritual life. And so when we talk about prayer, fasting, and almsgiving, there's a reason why this is sandwiched between the other two, because this is going to give life to the other two as well. If we abstain, if we fast, it's going to give life to the other experiences.
I think, in my research, I did a little research with Catholic Link. They said fasting was the restriction of consumption.
Yes.
And I think oftentimes we only think of that in the food. Maybe we can look at fasting maybe from things too. So like I was thinking okay, so maybe you struggle with the convenience of food.
Right.
So during Lent you could not go to any fast food. And all your meals are prepared, there's sacrifice involved. I mean, how strong, so many of us depend on that, like you said, that Whopper or whatever it is, instant gratification. Maybe that's our fast. Maybe that's a way we look at things. I was thinking about, for me personally, there are certain foods that I just love.
Yeah.
So, and I have them in my pantry. So maybe during Lent, I not only just deprive myself of some of those things, but maybe I even take those foods and I give them away. Because it's easy, I'll have kids, I'll be like, hey, bring some food in for the food pantry, and everybody brings the canned beets.
Yeah.
And
no, that nobody wants.
The thing nobody, but how powerful would that would be if I brought those things that I love, my favorite things, and gave those to the poor?
Yeah.
I think that'd be a much richer fast for the person. I don't know, but you guys.
Oh, I totally agree. One thing that I do is when we eat dinner at home, we usually have all the food laid out on the table, and then we just serve from there.
Oh, okay.
It's a
Family
horrible
style.
idea because I'm not a big snacker throughout the day,
Yeah.
but I will take seconds or thirds.
Yeah.
And so what I found, what works for us is, hey, let's stop doing that. Keep it on the stove, get up, serve, and then you're less likely to get up and get seconds. And that works in our house, at least for me anyway.
And
Because
that's very smart.
So,
That is
like,
a very smart way
I
to
won't
do it.
snack between meals, not much anyway, but I will gorge myself at the dinner table.
Right. That's a very interesting perspective. That's a really good way to look at things, because even how we serve it, how you give it is a form of fasting for you, because it's easy. Like I said, we've conditioned ourselves the convenience of especially food. And in America here, we're so fortunate. Like and that's what's bad, but all the bad food's so cheap. But like that concept, I mean, I think there's ways we can find new, unique ways to really fast, but we have to reflect and say, what are my struggles? What are my things that I have made convenient in my life, so I can die to myself a little bit and focus on Christ.
Yeah, and when I had my Lyme disease, and I was seeing this doctor in Pittsburgh who's a specialist in this, and she's real extremely smart woman, and she specialized in all sorts of things. But one of the other things that she did was in nutrition and health and that kind of thing. And one thing she said that I probably never forget is, it's okay to be hungry.
Yeah.
Like in the United States, it's kind of we all have access to food whenever we want for the most part, and it's easy to not. You start to feel hunger, and it's like, oh, I got to eat.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to. And that was kind of like had like this light bulb moment in my brain. I'm like, oh well, yeah, no, you're right. I don't have to. I could be hungry. It's okay. I'll live for another meal. It's gonna be all right. And so that also helped too. It's just the thought of like, we're just very fortunate here. And that is a form of fasting, is, hey, starve yourself for, one, for your health, and not starve yourself, but, feel that hunger, that pain, offer it up to God as a sacrifice. And that's one thing that that helps me, is because it's like, well, if it's just for my health, I don't care. Like, I'll do a couple extra push-ups or whatever. But like, if I'm offering that up as, this is my sacrifice, it's not much, but it's something.
All right. So, Father Andy, as we kind of wrap things up here, what do you, if you get someone out there is like, okay, I struggle with fasting, it's a reality. What advice would you give them? What are good ways to start? Baby steps. I mean, realistically, if I don't run, I'm not going to get up tomorrow and run a marathon. So, what are some ways we can start jogging and get there, especially as we're in Lent? Maybe we messed up already. Maybe I screwed up. I had a meatball sub on Friday, and I struggled. What advice would you give to somebody?
Well, I think the key, you hit the nail on the head, is that if you're going to run, you first have to be able to crawl, to walk, and then finally get up and run. So I think the first thing is recognizing that if you've never done it before, you're not going to be able to do a 7-day water fast right away. And so you need to take it slow, and you need to be smart with it and talk with someone about it, right? Be smart with that. Any addiction, because we can look at a lot of things as addiction. The best way that we can accomplish or tackle an addiction is by being responsible to someone else. And so number one, I would say, don't go it alone. Get someone else to go with you. There's that, a lot of guys right now are participating in Exodus 90. They've been going through that for a few weeks now, but they don't do it alone, right? They go together on it. So that would be my first recommendation, is find someone that you can do it with and be responsible with, because I think that's when you're going to first be able to take it on, is being responsible to someone else.
I like that accountability. Don't publish it on Facebook.
No.
Have one person. I think that's key.
And I think that's a great thing to do if you have a normal spiritual director. That's actually a really good person to be accountable with. Maybe you're not going to be able to see them every day or text them every day, so that's why you get another person. But being accountable first off to your spiritual director is key, because they're going to be able to help guide you and say, I don't think this spiritual fasting is a good thing for you for whatever reason it might be. I would say that the second thing is, after being accountable to someone, is you just got to try it, right? You just got to try it. You can't prepare for every little thing, and you can't beat yourself up when you fall.
Yeah.
And if you do fall, pick yourself back up, right? Pick yourself back up and keep moving. It takes 21 days to make a habit. So you have a chance to pick yourself back up and for 3 more weeks make a better habit of it. But it means that once you fall, your counter starts over at 0.
Yeah.
And you have to start again. And when you fall, recognize it as a fall, but don't beat yourself up over it. Don't allow yourself to fall into a state of depression or sadness because, oh, I messed up. Yeah, you did. Oh, well. Get up and keep moving. My mother, I can hear her now. If we were ever sick, she always say, just take some Tylenol and keep going, right? Just get up and keep moving. You can't fall down dead. You have to get up and keep going.
I think for, a good image is the cross. Jesus fell 3 times, and he got back up, and he had help.
That's right.
And so that's a good image for fasting. As we kind of end here, that our prayers are with you. I know it's tough. It's something that we all struggle with because we are so blessed. And I think being aware of those blessings and, how can I take this and be disciplined in my life, have some guidance, have some to walk with you through this, especially if you're doing it for the first time. Those are all, and the purpose is why. Why are we fasting? Don't make it about ourselves. Make it focused on God. I think that's the key. Any wise words, Vince? Did we hit all the...
Oh, great producer.
No, I think you guys did a good job.
Pay
Well
no
done.
attention
Well
to
done.
the man behind the curtain.
No, you hit all like the major points. Fasting is always hard for me, mainly because I don't eat seafood of any kind.
Sure.
So
Abstinence, fasting. Abstinence, fasting.
correct, there is a difference, right? So I don't know. Fridays are tough for me, and it's easier for me to try to fast on a
Yeah.
day like that. Now I still don't eat meat, but I'm not going to go home and have a big bowl of mac and cheese, right?
No,
So
absolutely.
I'll have 3 very small meals or 2 very small meals, or and usually try to devote that to asceticism or.
Well, and the other thing too, as we kind of, it's not that you have to only fast twice and then gorge every other night. You can fast as long as you want, right?
Yeah.
And it's a practice that is worthwhile and noble to take on. So if you're finding that you want to fast more, go for it.
Yeah.
Try it. Don't hesitate. The church only requires us to fast on 2 specific days, which I don't know about you guys. I know you Vince, you have difficulties with the fish and everything, but I always find the Good Friday fast beneficial, but difficult. You plan to fast, and that's the day your stomach's like, feed me, I need more food.
meat?
Eat. But there's certain days I can wake up and go do that intermittent fasting where 16 hours I'm not eating. I'm like, yeah, this is fine. I can do this. No problem. But then that one day you plan it.
That's just like that goes for any plans. At least nothing ever works if you plan it. At least in my mind, that's what happens in my life. I don't plan anything, and then things go fine. But like I said, you really hit everything. And the biggest thing is like if you mess up, it's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay, right? You're not going to go to hell if you mess up, right?
No.
So we do this to help build our own spiritual lives too. It helps us bring us closer to Christ. And that's at the end of the day, it's without trying, without the whole, felt banners and all that stuff, feel good stuff. But like it's, at the end of the day, we're trying to do God's will. We're trying to please God, and this helps us get us closer to God. And He knows we're going to mess up, right? People have messed up for thousands of years, and He's allowed us to continue messing up, and He loves us anyway.
His mercy is greater.
Yeah. So I guess with that said, we'll wrap it up here. So thank you everybody for tuning into the podcast. And if you have yet to see us on YouTube, make sure you check us out. Encounter Mercy, look us up. You can watch this, or if you just want to listen like you've been listening for the last couple of years, feel free to do that. But either way, we would like you to subscribe if you haven't already subscribed, and leave us a rating of some kind and a review. We'd love to hear your feedback. And head over to our website, encountermercy.com. Fill out the contact us form if there's anything that you would like us to talk about on air. And yeah, that's it. You guys got anything else?
No.
All right.
Good.
Well,
Bless you.
until next time, everybody, God bless.